When billionaire Ethan Montgomery decided to marry a struggling waitress, Claire Reynolds, it was meant to be a joke, a playful dare from his wealthy friends. Claire, with her modest charm and selflessness, seemed the perfect foil for Ethan's carefree, privileged lifestyle. What Ethan didn't anticipate was the depth of Claire's intelligence and resilience, traits she kept hidden beneath her humble exterior. Their honeymoon, an extravagant escape to the Maldives, was where Ethan thought he could control the narrative. But when Claire begins to unveil parts of herself, her painful past, her quiet dreams, and a secret that even she didn't fully understand, Ethan is forced to confront not only his arrogance, but the emptiness in his own life. By the time the truth comes out, Ethan's world will be forever changed. Ethan Montgomery had always lived in the lap of luxury. The heir to a billion-dollar empire, he'd grown up in New York's elite circles, surrounded by people who wanted to impress him. When his friends challenged him to marry Claire Reynolds, a woman they spotted working at a small diner, it seemed like harmless fun. Claire was kind, unassuming, and had no idea who Ethan was when he walked into the diner that fateful evening. "Hi. I'm Ethan," he said, flashing a charming smile. Over the next month, Ethan played the role of a sincere suitor, showering her with affection. Claire, wary at first, began to believe in the fairy tale romance. She said yes when he proposed with a diamond that could buy her entire hometown. Little did she know, behind the glamour of Ethan's world lay a man desperate for meaning. Ethan's closest friends laughed as they planned the elaborate honeymoon, betting on how long Claire would last in his world. But Claire was no ordinary woman. Behind her quiet demeanor lay untapped strength and a past marked by survival. The real game was just beginning, though Ethan had no idea he was about to be the one played. The honeymoon was a spectacle of excess. Ethan had spared no expense, chartering a private jet and reserving an exclusive overwater villa in the Maldives. To him, it was all about appearances, a picture-perfect escape for a marriage that wasn't meant to last. Claire, however, approached everything with curiosity and gratitude. She marveled at the crystal-clear waters and the golden sunsets, savoring every moment. But beneath her quiet appreciation, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ethan's charm felt rehearsed, and his fleeting attention often strayed to his phone, where his friends' messages buzzed incessantly. One evening, during a private dinner on the beach, Claire asked, "Ethan, what do you really want out of life?" Caught off guard, Ethan laughed nervously. "What do you mean? I already have everything I want." But Claire wasn't convinced. "Maybe you do. Or maybe you're just chasing things that don't matter." Her words lingered long after the conversation ended. Ethan began to notice things about Claire he hadn't before. Her sharp wit, her thoughtful observations, and a quiet confidence that made him feel exposed. For the first time, the game didn't feel like fun. It felt dangerous, as if he might lose more than he expected. It was the third night of their honeymoon when Ethan's carefully constructed world began to unravel. After a day of snorkeling and indulging in fine dining, Claire quietly retreated to the villa's library. Curious, Ethan followed, only to find her poring over a book on international economics, furiously scribbling notes. "Since when are you into this stuff?" Ethan asked, leaning against the doorway. Claire looked up, her eyes steady. "Since always. I studied it in college. I was supposed to go to grad school, but life had other plans." Ethan blinked. "You went to college?" Claire smiled faintly. "Yes, Ethan. Believe it or not, I wasn't born wiping down tables. I had a full scholarship to Yale. My professors thought I had a future in economic policy, but when my dad got sick, I dropped out to take care of him." The revelation hit Ethan like a wave. This wasn't the story he'd imagined for Claire. The simple waitress swept off her feet by a rich man. She wasn't just surviving. She had sacrificed her dreams for her family. That night, Ethan stared at the ceiling, replaying her words. For the first time in his life, he felt a pang of guilt. He had judged Claire based on what she appeared to be, never considering the depth of her story. But Claire wasn't done surprising him. A secret she had carried for years was about to emerge, one that would shift their relationship and his view of himself forever. The next morning, Ethan found Claire standing on the villa's deck, staring out at the endless ocean. She looked serene, but her posture carried an edge of tension. "Morning," Ethan said cautiously. "You okay?" Claire turned, her face unreadable. "Ethan, I've been thinking. About us? About why you chose me." His heart skipped. He opened his mouth to reply, but she held up a hand. "Don't. Let me finish." Her voice was steady, but her words cut deep. "I've spent my whole life being underestimated, by my bosses, by society, even by myself. And honestly, I thought you were different, but I'm starting to think I was wrong." Ethan felt a wave of panic. "Claire, that's not—" "Let me ask you something," she interrupted. "Why do you think I said yes to you? A guy I barely knew who swept me off my feet with promises that felt too good to be true." Her question hung in the air. Ethan, for the first time, was at a loss for words. "I said yes," Claire continued, "because I was tired of playing it safe. I wanted to believe in something bigger. But now I'm wondering if I was just a pawn in someone else's game." Ethan's stomach churned. Her words were closer to the truth than he cared to admit. But before he could respond, Claire dropped another bombshell. "And there's something else you should know. I didn't just leave Yale for my dad. I left because I was pregnant." Ethan froze. This was more than he had bargained for. The weight of his actions and her past was closing in fast. Ethan sat in stunned silence, grappling with Claire's revelation. His carefully curated life had never prepared him for this level of raw honesty. Claire's strength and vulnerability challenged everything he thought he knew about himself. For the first time he wondered, was he capable of being the man she deserved? Ethan couldn't sleep that night. Claire's words echoed in his mind, each syllable peeling back layers of his own arrogance. How could he have been so blind? Her revelation about her pregnancy left him questioning everything. Who was she really? And how much of her past had she sacrificed to survive? The following morning, as Claire walked along the shore collecting seashells, Ethan joined her, desperate, to bridge the growing chasm between them. "Claire," he began hesitantly, "why didn't you tell me about you, the baby?" She glanced at him, her expression softening slightly. "Because it's not something I share lightly. My son Alex was my world. Losing him, it's not a story I tell strangers." Ethan's chest tightened. "You lost him?" Claire nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "When Alex was 2, I couldn't afford his medical bills. No amount of working double shifts at the diner could save him. I failed him, Ethan, and after that I promised myself I'd never let anyone close enough to break my heart again." The weight of her pain was overwhelming. Ethan felt an unfamiliar sensation, guilt mixed with a desire to protect her. He had started this marriage as a joke, but now it felt like his only chance to prove he wasn't the shallow man she thought he was. But Claire wasn't the only one with secrets. Ethan's phone buzzed with a message from his best friend. "Ready to tell her the truth yet? Or should we keep this game going?" Ethan stared at the screen, realizing he was running out of time. Ethan's stomach churned as he stared at the message on his phone. The game, his friend's cruel dare, felt childish and sinister now. Claire's honesty had shattered his shallow world, leaving him exposed in ways he'd never anticipated. But the truth about their marriage loomed over him like a storm cloud. That evening, Claire noticed Ethan's unusual silence. "So you've been acting strange all day," she said, setting down her glass of wine. "What's going on?" Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding. He wanted to tell her everything, to confess the dare, but the words felt stuck in his throat. "It's nothing," he muttered. Claire's eyes narrowed. "You're a terrible liar, Ethan. If there's something you're hiding, just say it." The sharpness in her voice cut through him. "Claire, he started, but before he could finish, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, her expression turning icy. "What's this?" she asked, holding up the phone. Ethan recognized the number. One of his friends must have sent her a text by mistake. His heart dropped as she read aloud, "Did he tell you yet, or are we still pretending this is a real marriage?" Claire's face turned pale. "What does this mean, Ethan?" His mind raced for an explanation, but there was no way to soften the blow. "Claire, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It started as a bet, but it's not anymore, I swear." Her breath caught in her throat. "A bet?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me," she said coldly, tears welling in her eyes. "You lied to me. I trusted you." Claire's entire body felt numb as she stormed out of the villa. The warm Maldivian breeze did nothing to soften the sting of Ethan's betrayal. She had let herself believe in him, in the idea of a love that could transcend her past, only to find herself played as the punchline of a cruel joke. Ethan ran after her, his voice pleading, "Claire, wait, please, just hear me out." She stopped abruptly and turned to face him, her eyes blazing with anger and hurt. "You don't get to ask me for anything. Do you have any idea what you've done? You took the most broken parts of me and used them for entertainment." Ethan's voice cracked as he spoke. "You're right, I was selfish and cruel, and I can't take that back. But I swear, Claire, I've changed. You've changed me. This wasn't just a game anymore. I care about you." Claire shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Care about me? You don't even know me. You've only seen what you wanted to see, Ethan." Ethan stepped closer, his desperation palpable. "Then let me prove I can be better. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, Claire." For a long moment she stared at him, her emotions warring between anger and a lingering hope. Finally, she said, "If you want to make this right, then you need to start by facing the truth. Not just about me, but about yourself. Figure out who you are, Ethan, because I'm not waiting around to fix you." As she turned and walked away, Ethan felt the weight of her words settle over him. For the first time, he realized fixing this wouldn't be about grand gestures. It would require real change. Ethan woke up the next morning to an empty villa. Claire was gone. She hadn't taken anything but a small overnight bag and left a note with a single sentence. "Don't come looking for me unless you've found yourself first." Her absence hit him harder than he thought possible. The luxurious surroundings, the infinity pool, the private staff, the breathtaking views suddenly felt hollow. Ethan realized he had spent his entire life filling his world with things that masked the emptiness inside. Claire had seen through it all, and now she was gone. In a rare moment of self-reflection, Ethan decided to take action. He cancelled the remainder of the honeymoon and flew back to New York, determined to confront the mess he had made. The first step was cutting ties with the people who had encouraged his worst behavior. He called his friends, starting with the one who had sent Claire the text. "You were right, man," his friend joked. "That waitress thing was hilarious." "No," Ethan said firmly. "It wasn't. It was disgusting. And I don't want to hear from you again." He hung up before they could respond, surprised by the rush of relief he felt. Next, he turned his attention to himself. For weeks, Ethan poured his energy into reflecting on his life and his choices. He sought out a therapist, began volunteering at a local community center, and even revisited some of his father's old teachings about the responsibilities of wealth. Slowly, he started to see the person he wanted to become. Not the man Claire had exposed, but someone capable of earning her trust. Months passed before Ethan saw Claire again. It wasn't planned. They crossed paths at a small charity event she had organized in her neighborhood. She was surrounded by people, her natural warmth and leadership shining through. Ethan approached cautiously, unsure if she would even want to speak to him. "Claire," he said softly, his voice almost drowned out by the crowd. She turned, her expression unreadable. "Ethan," she replied, her tone neutral. "I've been working to fix what I broke," he began. "Not just with you, but in myself. I've changed, Claire. I don't expect you to believe me, but I had to tell you." Claire studied him for a moment as if weighing his sincerity. "And what do you want from me, Ethan?" "Nothing," he said honestly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. You deserved so much more than I gave you." There was a long silence before Claire spoke. "People don't change overnight, Ethan, and they don't change for someone else. If you're doing this for you, then maybe you're on the right path." Her words weren't a promise, but they weren't a rejection either. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt hope, not because of what she might give him, but because of what he was finally giving himself, a chance to be better. Ethan left the charity event with a strange mix of emotions. Claire's words weren't forgiving, but they weren't final either. He realized that proving his growth wasn't about convincing her in a single moment. It was about consistency and patience, qualities he'd never valued until now. Over the next few months, Ethan dedicated himself to his transformation. He expanded his volunteering efforts, mentoring young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds, and launched a foundation to support single parents struggling with medical debt, a tribute to Claire's story. Claire, meanwhile, watched from afar as news of Ethan's efforts began to ripple through their circles. She was skeptical at first, wondering if it was just another performance. But over time, his actions spoke louder than words. He wasn't flaunting his changes. He was living them. The moment of reconciliation came quietly. One evening, Claire found herself at an event for his foundation. Ethan stood at the podium speaking humbly about how much he had learned from his mistakes. After the speech, she approached him, her heart pounding. "Maybe you're not the same man I met," she said, her voice soft but steady. Ethan met her gaze, hope flickering in his eyes. "I've been trying not to be." Months after their fateful encounter at the foundation event, Ethan and Claire's paths intertwined once more. This time it wasn't by chance, it was by choice. Claire agreed to meet Ethan for coffee in a small cafe, far from the glitz and glamour of his old world. The conversation was simple at first, focused on life and work. Ethan shared stories of his foundation's impact, while Claire talked about her plans to open a non-profit, supporting single mothers pursuing higher education. For the first time, their dialogue was free from pretenses, rooted in mutual respect and genuine care. "I never thought I'd see this version of you," Claire admitted, her eyes searching his. "But you've proven me wrong." Ethan smiled, his tone reflective. "I had to lose you to realize what I was missing. Not just you, but myself. Thank you for opening my eyes, even if it wasn't your intention." Claire hesitated, then reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "You've come a long way, Ethan, and maybe, just maybe, we could figure out what comes next. Together." Ethan's heart swelled, but he didn't rush to make promises. He had learned that actions meant more than words. "One step at a time," he said with a soft smile. Their journey wasn't about a grand romantic reunion, but the slow, deliberate process of building something real. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt grounded, and Claire saw the glimmer of a man she could trust. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and redemption, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves inspiring tales. Let us know in the comments what part touched you the most, and we'll see you in the next story.